Chambers of Xeric, Scouting and Scaling, 3rd of October, 2023. In this year's Summer Summit Gigapoll, you voted overwhelmingly in favor of improvements to scouting and scaling in the Chambers of Xeric. After a lot of conversation among the team about what these improvements should look like, we've got some thoughts to share. Scouting and Scaling. Unlike other raids, Chambers of Xeric doesn't have a fixed layout. Instead, raid instances are generated upon entry, giving players a variety of unique encounter combinations. As such, it's incredibly unlikely that you'll get the same route back to back, which keeps things fresh and lets players make meaningful choices. However, this system has its downsides. For example, some rooms are more mechanically demanding than others or require better gear. Players learning the content for the first time might have a couple of rooms that they'd like to avoid while they get to grips with other encounters, like the raid's final boss, the Great Olm. At the opposite end of the spectrum, the most confident players might want to push for record-breaking completion times, but can't reliably scout a speedy layout. Improving the current scouting system presents some unique challenges too. Firstly, only the players at both extremes of the skill scale stand to benefit. We need to ensure the system meets their needs, as well as providing for players in the middle who aren't so concerned about finding the perfect layout. Secondly, we already have a scouting system which generates layouts using a rotation system, where one room must be followed by another according to a specific set of rules. This image from the OSRS wiki illustrates that system nicely. Rewriting the generation system to ignore these rotations is not a simple task, although it will allow players to generate layouts that have never been seen before. Lastly, allowing players to select their own layouts will lead to more consistently fast raid completions over time, which could significantly impact the raid's profitability when uniques start entering the game at an increased rate. Since the poll, we've been hard at work considering all the above points, and we think we've come up with a proposal that addresses all of them. Our proposal. In short, this is what we're proposing. Players can select the number of rooms in the raid, between 5 and 8, to determine the size of the raid layout. Players can select a specific layout based on their selected size. Players can select specific encounters to fill each room with in the layout. These are irrespective of pre-existing rotations. In other words, you'll be able to fully customize your raid. Players also have the option to pick a predefined static layout. We're exploring a more beginner-friendly layout initially. There's also the potential to add a competition layout, which would let speedrunners compete fairly with one another, so that people could compete on a different, fixed layout, although this feature is low priority at the moment. Players are shown the cost of their raid. 500,000 GP for a fully custom raid. A reduced fee for a predefined beginner-friendly raid layout, which would exclude Vanguards, Vespula, Vasa, and Tecton, the most frequently skipped encounters. Additional costs for scaling. One additional player costs 100,000 GP, a second costs an extra 99,000 GP, a third costs an extra 98,000 GP, and so on. The layout itself and any costs incurred depend solely on the player creating the raid. If you're raiding in a group, one player will be responsible for setting up layouts and paying the cost, though you could always agree to split this cost between yourselves beforehand. All these settings will be stored on your character, so if you'd like to repeat your previous layout, then you'll be able to do so at the click of a button. Let's see how this might work in detail. Say you pick 5 rooms and a layout containing 4 combat rooms and 1 puzzle room. From here, you can populate those combat and puzzle rooms however you like, as long as you can cough up 500,000 GP for the privilege. Although this is a fully custom system, some existing rules will still be in effect. You must have at least 5 rooms in the raid, and at least 1 room must be a puzzle room. There can be no duplicate combat rooms, and in smaller layouts there can be no duplicate puzzle rooms either. At least 1 scavenger and 1 farming room are placed on the map automatically, regardless of the layout you've chosen. Why 500,000 GP? While we're not married to this specific value, we think this is a decent ballpark, and we have the maths explain that figure a little. According to the OSRS wiki, every 1,000 points earned inside Chambers of Xeric amounts to around 96,000 GP from unique drops, and around 14,000 GP from common drops, totaling around 110,000 GP. Conservatively, the average number of points earned in an unscaled solo raid is around 30,000, amounting to around 3.3 million GP worth of loot, made up of around 420,000 GP from common drops, and around 2.88 million from uniques. The number of points earned in other scales varies heavily. Duos often average around 40,000 points, trios in the region of 50 to 60,000 points, depending on the layout of course. Solos make for a useful comparison, since you'd be incurring the full cost of a custom layout entirely on your own. At 500,000 GP per layout, even if you never see a unique item, we've all been there, On average, you'll make back over 80% of your upfront costs from common drops alone. Once you factor in uniques, you'll still be making a tidy sum from each completed raid. For experienced players who want to experiment with new layouts, this cost feels balanced. For those of you just starting out, the amount may be a little high, but shared between your raid buddies, it's a little more reasonable. If you're really looking to maximize your profit, your goal should be to familiarize yourself with every room so that you don't have to pay the custom layout fee at all, which is something we still want players to do rather than only running meta layouts. Ultimately, we want players to keep engaging with everything Chambers of Xeric has to offer. The raid is designed for replayability and variety, not playing it the same way every single time. Iron players may still choose to incur the full cost while soloing. Alternatively, they can use an alternate account to make the layout, or group up with friends and take turns to pay the fee over several sessions. Of course, you can also keep hunting for that twisted mode the good old-fashioned way, with a random generation you know and love. Moving on from scouting, scaling should be as simple as ticking a box and entering a number on the initial party creation interface, as long as you have the funds. We're currently kicking costs off at 100,000 GP, decreasing by 1,000 GP with each additional player added. This cost is a bit trickier to balance. The value of these invisible players is hard to measure. If each additional real player adds 10,000 points, then a cost of 100,000 GP seems like a fair trade, but it doesn't factor in the additional difficulty, or the fact that combat and puzzle rooms scale at different group sizes to Ulm, where the majority of points are obtained. Additionally, there's the cost of having an alt account to set up the layout in the first place in the current implementation, and whether or not this might work out cheaper than the cost we've outlined here. Ultimately, we're not sure there is a correct value for either scouting, custom layouts, or scaling up raids solo, so we'll be keeping a close eye on your feedback to make sure we're at least in the right ballpark. As is tradition, we have a short survey where you can share your thoughts. So, those are the plans. We know this update has been a long time coming, but we needed that extra time to investigate what's possible, figure out what we can actually deliver on time, and decide what changes we're comfortable making. The last thing we wanted to do was overpromise and come up short. We'd like to thank everyone for their patience, and we hope this proposal is in line with your expectations. We'd really appreciate you taking the time to fill out the survey above, or just getting in touch on all the usual social channels. In the meantime, happy raiding, and good luck with the ongoing grinds. You can also discuss this update on our official forums on the 2007scape subreddit, the Steam forums, or the community-led OSRS Discord in the Game Update channel. For more info on the above content, check out the official Old School Wiki, the Old School team. That's the end of the initial blog. Now we'll move on to the subsequent blog. Chambers of Xeric, Potential Tweaks and Changes, 10th of October, 2023. We have a fun-sized blog for you today with a stacked survey to compensate. If you're actively clearing or interested in the Chambers of Xeric, please read on because we'd love to hear from you. Chambers of Xeric, Scouting and Scaling. Let's not waste any time. Our proposal for changes to scouting and scaling missed the mark for many of you last week. Beyond the nitty-gritty of what cost feels appropriate and tweaking specific numbers, the feedback that stuck out to us the most was around tackling the root cause of the problem we're trying to solve. We've spoken before about the desire to offer a number of proposed tweaks to the Chambers of Xeric to address common complaints over the years, which might ultimately reduce how necessary it feels to scout in the first place, and last week we said that we'd look to deliver those changes after we'd gotten a handle on scouting. You pointed out that it feels a little backwards to do things in this order, suggesting that we instead make changes to the rooms themselves first, and then explore a system for custom layouts afterwards once the dust has settled on the changes. So we're going to be changing our approach and doing exactly that, while still looking to deliver as much as possible within the same time frame we'd projected for our original plans. Part of the reason for this is that by making scouting feel less necessary, it's likely that players are still going to be content with a variety of layouts that suit their personal preferences, which makes it more palatable for us to reduce associated costs or take a more lightweight approach to raid generation in the future. Ultimately, we want to deliver meaningful improvements to Chambers of Xeric before 2023 is out, ideally in time for you to enjoy them in the latter part of Leagues 4 Trailblazer Reloaded. But the team working on these changes cannot realistically deliver a full scouting overhaul and improvements to the various rooms within the time frame. Waiting to deploy both at once would mean delaying things even longer, and we think both of you, and us, would rather see something than nothing. Before we jump into all of the potential changes and a hefty survey, you might be wondering what we're doing for scaling since many of you weren't happy with the cost associated, instead pointing out that the difficulty is the cost, in the same way that increasing your raid level at Tombs of Damascus doesn't charge you a flat fee. With that in mind, scaling your raids up will be free, though we will be keeping an eye on this one whenever we roll the change out. Chambers of Xeric, Tweaks and Changes. With this new approach, our plan is effectively to survey you on a number of changes both from our backlog and more recent player suggestions, figure out what's well received, poll the changes properly, and then roll them out in an order of priority that's supported by this survey. While our course of action now is to try and touch up the bad parts of Chambers rather than allowing you to circumvent them with custom layouts, we still want to explore custom layouts in the future since there are some needs that can't be met with any of these changes, speedrun layouts, for example. So we've included a question in the survey to gauge your thoughts on alternate approaches for a raid generation system in the future. All of our proposed tweaks are detailed in the survey, which you can take either using the embedded version below or by clicking here if you can't see the embed. Note, the survey is entirely multiple choice, but includes a lot of questions. It should take around 10 minutes to complete, so be warned. Maybe you're not in the mood to fill out a survey, but still want to see what's on the table? We've got you covered. I'll read the table. So there are 3 columns. The first is the category/room that's affected. The second is the proposed changes, and the third is some additional notes. So the category for the first change is general, and it has to do with energy. The proposed change is to add energy pools more frequently throughout the raid. And the notes are, energy can often be a pain point in Chambers. Rooms and paths between them can be large. Offering more pools is in keeping with the current thematic, and still maintains one of the prime use cases for stamina potions, which is for solo players taking on Ohm, without opening up extra inventory spaces and making solo Ohm fights easier. The next is a general prep. Speed up the growth time for Buchu, Golpar, and Noxifer plants. We all have that one iron friend we raid with who clears the Golpar too early and has to plant another one while you're left to tap your watch and tut disappointedly. We could pretty easily cut down on these downtime periods if it's something you'd like. The next one is general supply drops. Let all non-irons see supply drops from bosses if another non-iron dealt the most damage. Irons get this already. Non-irons have to pick the drops up and then drop them again. Let's make them consistent. This is another one for general supply drops. Have regular supplies appear for other accounts when dropped. Similar to being able to easily drop supplies to teammates inside the Theater of Blood, we'd like to make the same change to Chambers of Xeric since it has neat applications for going fast in teams, and also can come in handy in a pinch, like when you're an iron with no choice but to watch your teammates slowly succumb to the shaman's poison, since they're unable to perceive the antidote you've dropped for them. The kinds of supplies we'd look to include are Ceridome and Brews, Super Restores, Sandfuse Serums, Prayer Potions, Divine Super Combat Potions, Divine Ranging Potions, Divine Bastion Potions, Divine Battle Mage Potions, Divine Magic Potions, Ancient Forgotten Brews, Guthix Rests, Anglerfish and other hard food like sharks, manta rays, Chiron, etc., Stamina Potions, Phoenix Necklaces, Antidote ++ Potions, and other poison curing potions. The next category is Scavs drops. Adjust Scavs to always drop 2 Sicily, 4 Stinkhorn Mushroom, and 8 Endarkened Juice on death, rather than dropping these secondaries at random. Scav randomness can be a pain, so we'd like to propose making them super consistent. The downside here is that your chances to just loot 40+ Endarkened Juice at once are reduced, so this might work out a little less exciting if you're prepping for a large group, though we think the consistency would still be a welcome change. Another Scavs drops, make Malignum Root Planks stackable. We'd all like to make prep a little smoother and spend less time weighing up which of our supplies to part with or decant just to make space, so why not cut down on some of the extra inventory management and streamline your prep a little. Scavs shortcuts. Speed up the mining and woodcutting shortcuts to bring them a little more in line with boulder shortcuts. As it stands, boulder shortcuts are the only ones we see teams doing very often. The points offered by these isn't worth the time it takes, so we'd like to speed them up for those scenarios where you've got a pickaxe or axe on you. Tecton. Reduce the defensive capabilities of Tecton in both regular and CM raids. We have a number of avenues to explore for this, which is arguably one of the most long-standing pain points about Chambers of Xeric. We're surveying all of the following for your feedback. Elder Maw hits reduce Tecton's defense by 5% of its current value. For context, 7 Elder Maw hits would lead to a defense reduction greater than a Dragon Warhammer special attack, which adds up pretty quickly in groups. Artificially guarantee the first Dragon Warhammer special attack against Tecton to hit. Reduce Tecton's crush defense in his enraged form, the red one. Prevent Tecton's defense from resetting when healing at the anvil. Crabs. Prevent splashing on crabs. While niche, those rare scenarios where you fire a magic projectile at a crab on the last possible tick, waiting for the approval of your teammates, only for you to splash and watch the white orb slowly float along until something interrupts it, can be pretty frustrating, so no more splashing. Crabs again. Remove the attack delay after hitting a crab. Removing this delay, similar to jugs at Zebak or pillars at the Path of Scabrous inside Tombs of a Mascot, makes it easier to gather up crabs, correct your mistakes, or to make some last-minute color changes for a clutch solve or two. Ice Demon. Make kindling stackable up to a cap of 28. Same reasoning as the planks. Less banking, no more chopping. Ice Demon. Reduce Ice Demon's magic defense. Particularly in CMs, even fire spells can prove pretty inaccurate versus Ice Demon. We'd like to reduce this frosty fellow's magic defense, which is also one of the only instances in Old School of an NPC using its defense level for its magic defense roll. Neat. To improve the potency of bringing the correct equipment. Ice Demon again. Add Herblore secondaries, in Darkened Juice, Stinkhorn Mushroom, Sicily, in significant quantities as a drop from Ice Demon. This one's perhaps a little out of left field and we'd absolutely be open to making other changes to Ice Demon, but we wanted to experiment with an alternate means of making the room a little more appealing and giving it its own identity. So, just as Vanguard's is the no prep room, perhaps making Ice Demon the prep room might give groups and learners some extra incentive to run layouts with Ice Demon in them. Thieving. Make grubs stackable, up to a cap of 28. You know the drill. Cut down on inventory management on the way in, and get straight into picking locks and looting grubs. Thieving again. Guarantee a minimum of 1 grub obtained on successful chest open, with the aim of speeding the room up. Lockpick success rates can feel pretty hit or miss at times in the thieving room, and this feeling gets worse when you're looting a whole lot of nothing on every chest. So why not guarantee something and improve the room's consistency and speed? Vanguards. Standardize and adjust the supply drops offered by Vanguards. We gave Vanguards a guaranteed Overload Plus drop a while ago, but the room still has a good bit of variance and can be the difference between a deathless run or a dead run for people just getting into no prep raids. Our current proposal is to adjust their drops to be static and look something like this. 1 guaranteed overload and chance for more overloads as random drops still applies. Melee Vanguard, 2 Xeric's Aid, Elder Plus. Range Vanguard, 1 Xeric's Aid, 2 Revitalization, Twisted Plus. Magic Vanguard, 1 Xeric's Aid, 1 Prayer Enhance, Kodai Plus. Vasa Nisterio. Add a guaranteed overload plus drop. This is a fairly common suggestion. It makes Vasa more appealing to learn for those who are newer to the raid, gives experienced players more viable choices of first rooms when scouting for speedy money layouts, and provides more overloads as drops throughout the raid for small groups. Vasa Nisterio again. Adjust Vasa's defensive capabilities. Similar to Tecton, we have a couple of options here. 2 that stand out the most, which we're asking you about in the survey. Reduce the range defense of both regular and CM Vasa. Adjust Vasa's healing mechanic, so that he only heals if you don't destroy a crystal in time. The reason for this change is that ever since changes to the Toxic Blowpipe in 2021, Vasa's felt a little bit like a gear check in both regular and CM raids. We'd like to take him down a notch, so that more learners might give this rock-slinging room a go. Muttadiles. Reduce the variance of chopping the meat tree at Muttadiles. We can't exactly talk about Chambers of Xeric changes without addressing the tri-birding, one-shotting, prayer disrespecting, brew destroying crocodiles in the room. This change in particular focuses on tree chopping. While the chop success rate scales pretty neatly with woodcutting levels, the damage dealt to the tree rolls between 0 and your woodcutting level, leading to extremely high variance. We'd instead like for the damage dealt when woodcutting to roll within a small range of half of your woodcutting level. For example, at 90 woodcutting you'd roll between 40 to 50 damage rather than between 0 to 90. Muttadiles again. Remove Muttadile's damage immunity when eating from the tree. This includes the immunity gained when frozen just before eating from the tree. Perhaps an unusual change. We think a change like this might make DPS rushing feel slightly better, but primarily will make well-timed freezes really impactful. Currently, it's possible to freeze both of the Muttadiles just as they're about to head to the tree, resulting in them nulling all damage for a short while. Even though they won't go back to the tree, being rewarded with a bunch of zeros doesn't feel good, and this change means you'd be properly rewarded for bringing the right kit while also giving you an avenue to speed up the room. Muttadiles again. Reduce the damage taken by players at Muttadiles. You can stop wondering where this one is now. Ultimately, Muttadiles hitting like a train, carrying other trains, and depriving you of all Saradomin Brews or Xeric's Aid doesn't feel great either. we have a number of potential approaches to take. Reduce their attack speed, lower their max hits, increase the damage reduction offered by correct protection prayers. Our personal favorite, make the Muttadil's attacks more predictable. For example, only letting them change style after X attacks with the previous style, increasing how likely they are to use the previous style, etc. Vespula, add a guaranteed overload plus drop. This is a fairly common suggestion. It makes Vespula more appealing to learn for those who are newer to the raid, gives experienced players more viable choices for first rooms when scouting for speedy money layouts, and provides more overloads as drops throughout the raid for small groups. Vespula again. Tweak Vespula's mechanics without impacting the redemption method. We asked 100 raiders how to do Vespula without using redemption. 76 said they didn't know, 22 said they'd never seen Vespula and added that their mentor won't let them into the crab's room, and 2 people said they knew how, but were probably lying. Ultimately, we'd like to make some adjustments to Vespula that might make taking it on in a more conventional sense feel a little better, but also add a little leniency to the current redemption meta. Reduce damage from Vespula's regular attacks and poison, reduce the speed at which Vespine soldiers heal the Abyssal Portal, increase the time taken for Vespine soldiers to grow. The Great Olm, add a cooldown between healing pool attacks during Olm's final phase. Simple enough, it can get a little annoying running from pool to pool to pool when you're just trying to get into a nice rhythm. So we'd like to add a little timer between them. The Great Olm again. Limit the distance away from the player at which a portal can spawn during Olm's portals, special when soloing. A little wordy, but hopefully you get the gist. If you're solo, Olm's portal special places a portal somewhere in the room for you to get to. Occasionally, this portal spawns too far away for you to reach in time, and can really throw you off if you're hit with one while trying to get into the iconic 4-to-1 cycle as a learner. We'd like to limit the distance a little so that it spawns within a more reasonable range of you, but you'll still have to be paying attention to make it in time. There's our table of everything that's on the table for Chambers changes. The aim of these is to make some less popular rooms feel like more of a choice than a chore, so that when we come back to visiting custom raid layouts, it feels a little less like we're offering you a way to circumvent the bad bits of the raid, and instead, like you're being given agency over a whole range of actual choices. We say it every blog, but we mean it when we say that we really value your feedback. We don't always get things bang on the first time around, and we know you'd been waiting for changes to Chambers of Xeric for some time. Please share your thoughts with us, let us know if you agree with our change in approach, and help steer us in the right direction. Until next time, good luck on the gains, and happy scaping. You can also discuss this update on our official forums, on the 2007 Scape subreddit, the Steam forums, or the community-led OSRS Discord and the Game Update channel. For more info on the above content, check out the official Old School Wiki, the Old School team.